Welcome to the Industrial Kingdom podcast, where expertise meets opportunity, exploring real industrial projects, smart investments, and the future of manufacturing and agribusiness across the MENAT region and beyond.
Hi, welcome back to the Industrial Kingdom podcast. I am Valerie Zakka, your host, and today I have the pleasure to receive Monsieur Antoine Kallab. Welcome, Antoine.
Thank you, Valerie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Antoine is advisor to the Minister of Industry, His Excellency Issa Khoury. He advises them specifically on circularity, environmental issues. You will tell us a bit.
Yes.
And I am very proud to be discussing these topics with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie, for hosting me, and it's a pleasure to be on the Industrial Kingdom podcast.
Thank you. So to start, please tell us a bit about yourself for those who don't know you, about your path, and how did you land this prestigious position? But more than prestigious, it's a big responsibility, I'm sure.
Yes, one I like to call it a calling, effectively. No, I believe that we have a lot of expectations, especially from the current government, but we also have to pitch in one way or another. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to work with someone like Minister Issa Khoury, who is really championing a lot of the reforms that we need to see in the government. So it is prestigious, not as a title, but more as an opportunity to contribute.
Yes, exactly. For me, this is real prestige.
We agree, we're aligned.
Yes.
Effectively, I'm actually not specifically an environmental expert. My background is very much in governance, public policy development, and urban economic development. Mm-hmm. All of this is to say is that I really work at the intersection between governance and how to use urban economics or infrastructure or any economic vision for a particular sector, mm-hmm, to improve a lot of the problems that we see on a day-to-day basis, especially in developing countries or what we call global south countries like Lebanon. And my experience is relatively international. I worked in France, in Vietnam, and I worked on projects in Russia and Saudi Arabia and so on. But I'm happy to be back in Lebanon since 2020, mm-hmm, actually working on a lot of developmental projects. I worked a lot in research at AUB. And currently I teach environmental policy and strategy at AUB.
That's also amazing.
It's a nice it's being in a setup like AUB is always there. It offers a lot of chances to grow, to stay in touch with students, with researchers, with a lot of the debates that we need to have around a lot of the challenges that we face in our times.
And maybe also creating awareness with the younger generation.
Absolutely. And also to keep reminding ourselves that we need to invest from now to make sure they have better circumstances as a generation that is already facing a lot of problems, mm-hmm, caused by previous generations. So we need to do better for them.
We are facing also the problem.
Absolutely. But we're also the solution.
Yes, totally. I like that. Definitely, I feel now that I see it actually. Clearly, there is a momentum of people actually presenting tangible solutions. Whether they get approved, developed, financed, this is another issue.
A lot of ifs.
Yes.
But it's part of the game.
Yes, the seed is there. It is growing, I guess. Right? And on that topic, tell us a bit what are the projects that are being handled right now by the Ministry of Industry. Like you said, His Excellency is championing a lot of changes. What are some of the things that you can share with our viewers?
Okay. So first, as a ministry, a lot of things are happening, and the ministries in the industrial vision strategy for the entire industrial sector actually really pushes reforms and investments and and initiatives to reform the entire sector and to maintain, even increase our export readiness and competitiveness, relies on issues related to nearshoring, for example, and also strengthening a lot of the trade relations we have to be able to export a lot of our industrial output. And of course, for example, a few weeks ago, we saw that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia opened again the door for Lebanese exports, which was great news for the Lebanese industrial sector and the entire Lebanese economy in the country as well. So this also requires working closely with the Ministry of Economy and Trade and other ministries as well. Now, when it comes to my personal portfolio at the ministry, it's primarily related to the recycling sector as a whole, and how we can industrialize the waste sector. And as the ministry likes to quote our friend Ziad Abishekir when he says we need to move from waste management to waste industry. من معالجة النفايات إلى صناعة النفايات. For the simple reason is that recycling doesn't scale up without markets. When we talk about markets, we need to create supply and demand. And when in the particular case of recycling is an industrial activity, and therefore it has to be an integral part of industrial policy in order for us to be able to develop the market.
Can you like develop a bit about on that note? Yani why, how is it viewed as an industrial activity rather than just an environmental cause, let's say?
Okay, so when I'm done drinking this bottle of water and I need to dispose of it, okay, it has one of two trajectories. Either I call it waste and it goes to a landfill or to a dump, unfortunately, or so on, or I call it raw material for manufacturers. And this is where it eventually takes up a trajectory across an industrial value chain. And this is where, if I don't connect the value chain together, if I don't understand how the later part of the value chain, what are their requirements and specifications for how it should be collected and processed and so on, then I cannot valorize this particular product. So when I move on from the categorization of waste into raw material, this is where it becomes an industrial process. And the whole concept of circular economy, of course, we use it for an environmental outcome, but essentially it is an industrial concept because it talks about circularity within the industrial production loop. And this is where, if I don't coordinate my entire industrial sector across the streams and across producers, I will not be able to maximize the value of these products at disposal, and I will not be able to create a proper dynamic of supply and demand, so that I can maximize demand for these products, and which will eventually incentivize sorting from the source, proper recovery of resources, and so on. So this is where industrial policy, the Ministry of Industry, or the industrial sector plays not only a crucial part in circular economy, but actually is the solution for our waste crisis, because the solution is recycling, and recycling is industrial.
So they're not a player; they are probably like a major, or like as a solution rather than like.
They are the only solution if we want to push what we call landfill diversion, which is going away from landfills.
Where would this value chain start? Let's say the industrialization of the waste industry.
So
the value chain.
Effectively,
At the factories, or how?
So it's actually a loop if we want to look at it from a circular perspective. The first step any producer or manufacturer has to take actually starts at the design phase. Whenever I design a product, I need to make sure this product is using the least amount of physical material as possible to reduce waste. And actually, even in the new strategy for the integrated waste management sector in Lebanon, the pyramid of waste starts with reduction.
Yeah.
So I need to reduce the waste through proper design.
And this is how, sorry, but it's so important. It's how I start one of my signature training. This prevention is the best solution, reducing from the stores, from the design.
Absolutely, and this is a logic that we need to rely.
May I also add that it doesn't have to be. لأنه I know as the manufacturers, we now view recyclable material is more expensive, it's harder to source. has more like complications. حتى you might have to adapt your equipment to it. But sometimes you can just choose strategically, even if it's standard material, the combination of label and bottle you use, for example, or something like that.
So we need to find, there's no one size fits all solution.
Exactly.
We need to adapt to, for example, in Lebanon, we cannot be theoretical and put all these regulations and have these expectations without taking into account, first of all, the current socio-political and economic context that we are in. So coming in the middle of an economic crisis and imposing a lot of regulations, this is not to say that these regulations are not important, but if the market is not ready for them and they are not gradually, they will simply not be implemented, and you will see a lot of informal processes happening. So we need to work with the industrial sector to understand the readiness and put together a plan that gradually gets us to achieve a lot of the targets and infrastructure upgrade that you are talking about. At the same time, we need a proper market. We need the market to take it up, which means that we need to make it interesting economically for companies to reduce their waste, to upgrade this infrastructure. And this is where subsidies, eco-labeling, tax cuts, for example, or so on. This is where also a lot of the public awareness, trying to shift demand towards more eco-friendly products and so on. This is where also the market dynamics play a role. We need to use both. Obviously, sometimes a market exists and we need to regulate it, but a lot of times we can also sort of steer the market towards certain practices and consumer behavior, which eventually allows us for a win-win situation, let's say, across all
parties. The manufacturers are in a very powerful place to shift consumer behaviors. Absolutely. By offering them by choosing the package and also communicating on their packages, creating awareness this way. Once you're consuming a product, you're going to read what's on it. This basic, Absolutely. For example, a small idea,
And this is where awareness plays a very important role, because at the end of the day, we are talking about consumer behavior and we are talking about making a choice. Why am I going to purchase this product and not the other? So there's always the economic aspect of things. The rational consumer purchases the least expensive product. So this is where understanding the market is very important, because if only half of my companies are, let's say, introducing eco-friendly measures that eventually cost a bit more, they will lose their competitiveness. And it's unfair to punish them or to reduce their part of the market because they're doing the environmentally friendly thing. So we need to understand that regulation should come across an entire market or sector industry. We should not make it more, people should not be competing on whether they are making environmentally friendly products or not, because it will punish those who are the companies that are doing the right thing.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. Second, we also need the consumer to be aware, and this is why again, understanding recycling and recycling markets or the entire green industry, all of this really is not a purely environmental topic. We are not talking about environmental chemistry or pollutions or emissions and so on. We are really talking about understanding the market, the consumer, and the governance model of it all. Because, for example, the solutions are very much about raising awareness, about empowering the consumers, about working with producers, and this is where, again, the Ministry of Industry has a very important role to play.
Yeah, do you see this being kind of championed by the Ministry of Industry in terms of raising awareness with consumers, but also with factories?
Absolutely. And again, I have to give credit to His Excellency, the Minister Issa Khoury, because he is really taking it to heart. He understands that the industrial sector plays a very important role in the Lebanese economy, but he also defends the principle that polluters have to pay. So what does the polluter pay principle mean? It means that the producer of a particular good needs to internalize the environmental cost of disposing safely of this product, which means that at the end of the day, we should be able to differentiate between products that are highly pollutive or less pollutive, and this is where again the Ministry of Industry has to play a very important role.
So now that you tell us this, and it's sparking so many ideas in my mind, where are we in this right now? I'm not gonna.
Okay. Where are we? So there is now currently the waste sector is governed by Law 80 over 2018, and this is the Integrated Solid Waste Management Law of Lebanon that governs very much the sector at the legislative level. In December 2025, there was an amendment passed to this law, a very important amendment that we've been waiting for years, which is called the Cost Recovery Amendment. So they changed the Article 28 of the law, which now allows the municipalities to effectively impose a fee on their citizens within their municipal region to cover the cost of waste collection, and it also requires that the municipalities push sorting from the source and adopt as much as possible sustainable practices and other circularity related topics. This same law also mentions what we consider to be industrial terms, like, for example, recycling and recyclable 16 times, mentions sorting 17 times, reuse 11 times, and all of these, manufacturing and raw materials 6 times. All of these are industrial topics.
Yes.
And I will give you an example. For every job in a landfill that we create, we can create 10 times as many in the sorting facility,
and more decent jobs.
Absolutely. So this is why, but unfortunately, the law puts all this burden of value chain development, of market development for recyclables, of the circular economy. All of these are in the text of the law, which means that this is a law that goes from the proper principles. However, it puts all the burden on the Ministry of Environment. And this is unfair for the Ministry of Environment, because it is not within their scope or their ability to work on value chain development for recycling, because this is very much in the industrial policy level.
Yeah.
So we need to work on having recognized and a primary role for the Ministry of Industry, so that recycling can actually become driven by the market, and this is the only way for it to scale up, for us to process the more than 2 million tons of waste that we generate every year.
We had touched on this topic deeply with my previous podcast with Pierre Marlini. We had discussed that a bit. I think it makes sense, and also it will probably be more impactful.
Absolutely.
When the two are working on it together.
Absolutely.
So,
and if I may add something, is that at the end of the day, governments as a whole cannot be let's say a unidisciplinary topic. It has to touch on multidisciplinary, and we believe that the Ministry of Industry is here to push the recycling sector. We still need the Ministry of Environment to put environmental targets at the national level, to also work on the waste that is non-recyclable, and as well we need the Ministry of Economy, because they deal with markets and trade. We need the Ministry of Finance. We need the Ministry of Municipalities and Interior Affairs, because there's a big role for municipalities. We need the Ministry of Agriculture when it comes to composting and take-up of fertilizers and so on. And this is why we need to also activate the article in Law 80 that says there has to be a coordination committee. And we need this coordination committee to be activated as soon as possible with representatives from all these ministries, so that we let each ministry really do what they do best. And this is, in my opinion, how the waste sector should be governed.
Totally. So now we are all hearing about I think things are moving in that on that topic, and this is why we are here today. Everyone is hearing about the EPR law.
Okay.
So can you tell us a bit, what is this law and how it is applied?
So,
and who is it applicable to?
Okay. So we don't have a so-called EPR law. EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. It comes from the idea that polluters have to pay or offset the cost.
Everyone is a polluter. Who is the polluter?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, if I bought this bottle and you didn't, which means I am polluting, or I am responsible, even as a consumer. It comes down to the consumer level.
Okay.
Right? So this is where eventually everything trickles down to the consumer, but it also trickles down in a proportionate way, which means if you use a glass reusable bottle for water and I buy a plastic single-use bottle every day, it means that I am making a choice that is more pollutive, that is more dangerous for the environment than yours, which means that I should bear the cost of my choice of using single-use plastics rather than reusable bottles. But what we expect from the producer or at the industrial level is for the producer to help to use their infrastructure, their setup, their systems to organize all of this, which is done through what we call an EPR fee. And this is where I want to differentiate between a fee and a tax. So an EPR fee comes in and says, well, for me to be able to get rid of this bottle once it becomes waste, if I want to recycle it, there is a certain cost to recycle it that trickles down at the level of each bottle, which, for example, could be, let's say, 1 cent per bottle. And this is where, if I choose to buy every day a single-use bottle, then I need to pay for this 1 cent. Now, this 1 cent eventually goes back to the producer. The producer should give it to what we call a producer responsibility organization. And the producer responsibility organization will take this 1 cent and give it to the recycling factory to subsidize their cost and make it economically viable to recycle it. And eventually, the producer will also buy again the plastics. And this is how we end up with a circular model.
Who governs this chain?
So typically, I would say the most successful models and most importantly, sustainable models of PROs, producer responsibility organizations, are usually when you have a clear separation of role. So the industry itself brings in all the people within a waste sector or particular industry. So let's say, for example, we take all the bottling companies and we tell them, you will form a PRO, and this is how we can impose an EPR fee, not on half of the companies and the other half. No, actually we stabilize the entire market and we impose it on everyone. And this PRO needs to have proper traceability systems and a lot of data systems, and it has to work with municipalities to recover all this plastic waste so that they can refund this 1 cent. Now, in my opinion, especially in a context like Lebanon, where we have a lot of governance challenges and so on, I believe the best model, which is, again, a very common practice abroad, is to have the PRO to be led by industry. The PRO would have a board with representatives from the Ministry of Environment, Industry and Trade, Finance, Economy and Trade, and so on. So it would have a board. It would also have representatives from recyclers. It would have representatives from the sector. And this PRO would be eventually would report its data back to the Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Environment, which means that we let the public sector, we let the government to play an oversight role to make sure that the money is going to the proper place, to make sure that the system doesn't have any leakages, to make sure that the system is working and it's growing. But we let the implementation and financing come from the private sector. And this is where, in my opinion, we can actually have a closed loop, because for better or for worse, the private sector is much more efficient than the current government, than the current capacities of the Lebanese government. So we need to acknowledge this and say, the companies actually want an EPR system. And a lot of the sustainability regulations, especially coming from packaging sectors and so on, will eventually affect our export readiness if we don't push, waste reduction and circularity and recycling within a lot of our production. We will not be able to export anymore. So a lot of the companies support an EPR system, but we also believe that an EPR system should not fund the public treasury. The money should not go into the state. There is no EPR system that funds the treasury. Usually there is a fund, there's a PRO fund that is independent, that is not under the public sector.
Oh.
And from this fund, there's money coming in from the producer and importer, and money going out to the recycler.
I did have another, a quick intervention I wanted to ask you. So, Anna, as you know, I'm on the board of DCL, and we're always championing the legal private sector. right. هلا هيدا الاي بي ار لو بدها تطبق على مين؟ على الليجل برايفت سيكتور، بده يعلوا الاسعار وال شو بنسميها alternative we can call it sector will be competing on no price as usual.
Okay. So
What would I know? I'm sorry, maybe this is not within your scope.
I
Do
think
you understand the?
I think what you are talking about is the decree that was issued about almost a month ago, Decree 3214,
Yes.
which based on the law 80 and based on the principle that polluters pay and based on the principle of municipal cost recovery, very much changes the structure of how we finance the waste management system in Lebanon. And this is a good approach. And we need to decentralize the sector. We need to have more clear ways of financing the sector. Now, I'm not sure if let's call them the levies that were imposed on imports were they prepared under an EPR system or under the justification of an EPR system or not. I am not sure, because typically an EPR system would never tax products that are not, let's say, do not cause solid waste. Not so. For example, we see that this tax is applied on fuel. It's applied on jewelry, for example. It's applied on a lot of
yes, we have to pay it
food,
because we
and
have
so
to
on.
do our papers. It's a tax that you don't know what it's on.
Exactly. So which means that this is a tax. This is not a fee. A fee usually is calculated from a determined cost. So if I understand, for example, that the recycling of this bottle requires, let's say, $1 or a cent, it's a fixed fee. It's not a percentage. Why is this important in solid waste discourse? Because at the end of the day, if I buy let's say, I don't know, if I buy let's take alcohol, if I buy a cheap bottle of whiskey or an expensive bottle of whiskey, if they both contain 1 liter, okay, the waste management impact doesn't really change, right? So when I'm putting a percentage on it, I'm taxing the added value of the product. I am not using a fee to manage the waste of the product, which is contrary, which is not EPR. So this is what turns the EPR, the decree, into an environmental tax. And this is very important. Second, I also don't think this is an EPR fee because EPR starts with the PRO, and currently the PRO has not been established in Lebanon. So I believe this was a tax to cover some of the gaps that we need to finance the waste management sector.
I see. So an EPR is a fee, whereas a tax is an environmental tax.
Exactly, and the EPR is a fee on targeted products or waste streams, such as, so usually you see EPR, for example, on the packaging. On packaging products, on tires, on electronic waste, so really highly polluting but recyclable or recoverable material. You will never see an EPR fee, for example, on organic waste or food or fuel. This is not to say that fuel doesn't cause pollution. It causes emissions, and this is why you see we should, for example, implement perhaps in the future an emission tax, which would go to offset the pollution that causes fuel, but it should not be branded under solid waste management.
Yes. So I think because it's new, as for my experience in Lebanon and other places, I guess it might evolve, no? You have like a message to now people having to deal with this new tax. I mean, I just cleared a container yesterday and I paid this tax without knowing why I'm paying it. So do you have any like a message to manufacturers, to the industry in general about this tax or other things they should be, let's not say aware of, let's say look forward? So a good positive.
In terms of the tax, I don't have a stated position on it. It was imposed by the Ministry of Environment, and I think it's only fair to hear what they, what their plans are for this tax. What I want to say, especially to industrialists and even consumers and all citizens, the day we have a proper EPR system in Lebanon, this is actually a great opportunity to push the recycling sector, to create jobs, to maximize recovery of recyclable materials, to push the circular economy, which is not only what we need for the environment, but it's a great economic opportunity, and also it's what's mandated in the law. And that's a very important point. So we should, when we actually get to a stage where we have EPR, we should not be afraid of implementing it. On the contrary, this is something that has a lot of upsides and economic benefits, and as well as environmental benefits. And the second message I want to deliver, and this is especially to municipalities. So now the Article 28 amendment really puts a lot of the responsibility, especially when it comes to collection, on municipalities. And municipalities will be able to finance the system through fees collections from households and businesses and non-households. So, what's included is hotels, touristic resorts, and the manufacturing and so on. And this is a great way to minimize how much we are sending to the landfill, to push recycling at the local agenda, to put this responsibility on the municipality and the private sector, and to very much push the circular economy through the actors that know what's best for their community and know what is feasible given the perhaps the local constraints, such as geography, such as population, such as local socioeconomic status, such as the needs of the environment. So, for example, municipalities might take some of this budget to rehabilitate some of the dump sites that they have. So this is really a very good opportunity. We need to very much nail the proper governance model and financial structure for this system. And this is why I'm optimistic for the waste sector as a whole, which of course in Lebanon is a sector that suffered from a lot of challenges historically and so on. I believe a lot of the reforms that are happening and that we still want to push will eventually make this sector not a burden, but a productive sector in Lebanon's economy.
Such an opportunity for Lebanon, for our environment, but also profit generation.
Absolutely.
It's for municipalities as well as for the manufacturers themselves. Like it has a huge business case. So not only think about the environment.
Absolutely. And just if I can close with one sentence, is that of course, recycling is not only important for the environment, it's a duty. We need to recycle, we need to push the circular economy. That being said, recycling doesn't work without markets and industries. And that's why we need to look at it as an industrial sector, an opportunity, and we need to understand what are the economics, what is the financial model, what's the business model for it to work in order to maximize it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie.
I know that you are on the right path. Already we are supporting you and اتحمسنا على الموضوع. And I know this is a big issue that we will keep following up on. So thank you to our viewers for watching. Thank you again, Antoine.
Thank you, Valerie.
If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments or send us an email, and I will communicate them, of course, to Antoine. And also remember to like this video, stay tuned for the next episode of the Industrial Kingdom podcast, and follow us on social media. Thank you.
Thank you.